Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got a very interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Rike Lamella. What are those band-aids on your hands? They are two very deep cuts from this knife. This one has been glued, and this one has stitches. I have band-aids here so that you guys don't have to look at my fingers. This was the result of me trying to disassemble this knife, and I'm going to tell you guys right now, a lot of it was me not being smart. Most of it was me doing it incorrectly. I'm going to tell you guys about how to disassemble this knife, and after attempting it and watching other people do it, I can say pretty confidently that there's no perfectly safe way to do it. Basically, your options are to do it exactly right, and it's still pretty unsafe, or to do it like me, which is wrong, and it's extremely unsafe. Obviously, it's a little bit unsafe no matter what you're disassembling, right? If it's a knife, because it's got a sharp blade. This one, though, the way that it comes apart, it's just kind of ugh. But I'll tell you how I did it, and definitely don't do it that way. It was me being negligent, but I just wanted to get that out of the way. I am unable to deploy knives with thumb studs using my dominant hand, obviously, because I have stitches all the way down here, and I'm also not able to disengage lock bars with my thumb. So I'll be doing a lot of this with my left hand. Just bear with me. Thanks so much to Rike for sending this knife. Sending this knife into me for review. I will be keeping it in my collection. I very much do like it, and we'll talk about that. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me, and please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. This knife periodically becomes available. It depends on when you're watching this. It might be available, might not. I would imagine they will continue to make different variations of this knife. I would be very disappointed if they didn't. I will link old listings of this knife down below so that if it is available, you can check it out. It does help my channel when you use my links, but that's entirely up to you. Let's start off here if you're wondering. So how does it come apart? Are you going to show us how to disassemble it? No. I'm not. I'm actually kind of afraid of this thing at this point. Truthfully, I mean, here's the thing. If you're new to my channel, I have 3,000 uploads. I have never cut myself like this before. Ever. Even before I had the channel, right? This channel's been going on for about 5 years. It was inevitable that at some point this would happen. Honestly, I am shocked it took me this long to get an injury like this as much as I handle knives, right? It's safe to say that I handle more knives than the average person. I'm not trying to flex, but I do. And as careful as I am, you know, this is proof that at some point you're destined to take a little bit of a slice from one of these guys, you know? It makes sense that it was this one. This knife has a construction that is interesting and unique. I've never seen anything like it, and I'm sure there's maybe something else kind of like it out there, but initially I thought that this was an integral, meaning the frame was entirely one piece of titanium, like it was milled from a single block. It's actually not the case. You can see here that these are not just different, like it's not like the titanium was just finished in two different colors. These are separate pieces of titanium that fit together really, really well. They actually follow lines. They just look like milling lines, but they actually separate. You can see right here, this darker piece of titanium unsheathes itself from the lighter piece of the titanium, which is the main internal part of the frame. The way that you get it to disengage is by sticking a tool into this bottom latch right here. You can see there's a little piece carved out and there's a little spring right there. You push in right here. This is the tool that I was using, which was very stupid. It was the wrong tool for this. This was a little aluminum pivot centering tool. I was sticking this in right here and I was pushing forward. Now, ideally, you'd get something that was lipped and able to hold in place so that you don't slip off of it. Obviously, no matter what you are doing, no matter what tool you are using, there's always room for error, no matter how practiced you are, right? The more you expose yourself to something, anything, if it's the same thing over and over and over again, the more likely you are to injure yourself, even if you are practiced. It's just one of those things. Listen to me making excuses for myself, right? But anyways, you have to push down, push over, and at the same time, while you're holding all of this, you have to pull back on this. It's my understanding that you're not able to keep the blade deployed because these thumb studs here, or thumb geometric shapes are putting pressure on the part of the frame that actually needs to come off. So on top of all this, you also are having to keep a swinging blade back. Now I'm going to try and not paint the most vivid picture for you, but essentially I was holding the knife like this and pushing, and I pushed my, yeah. So that's what happened. There is a successful disassembly video on YouTube, and it was done by KNAF. I would suggest that you watch that video because he did a way better job than me. So KNAF, and that's Lamella Disassembly. He does a wonderful job if you guys want to check that out. I will not be performing this act today. So anyways, that's how it comes apart. Very interesting. Let's go ahead and get a measurement of this knife. Overall length of the Lamella is coming in at, wow, it really is a lot bigger than it looks. Almost 9 inches, almost exact. It's like 8.85 inches. The blade length, depending on where you measure it, like if you're going to come down here and you're going to measure cutting edge, the cutting edge itself is like 3.85 inches. The front, yeah, you know, the blade, it's all of 4 inches. I'm going to give it that. It's a big boy. It just doesn't look, there's so much curvature, there's so much else going on. It's kind of distracting from the fact that it's actually a really, you know, a pretty big knife. It's really going to test me here. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons up against the Ontario Rat Model 1 and the Ontario Rat Model 2. Maybe opening knives with 2 hands for a little while is good for me, right? You can see there, big knife. How about up against the Spyderco? I can still do the... Oh God, you guys about witnessed another injury there. You know, and I'm not even going to mess around with that because these 2 fingers, man, I can't use them. It sucks. But up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3, you can see here again, you know, big knife. And then last but not least, let's get these size comparisons out of the way. The Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue, and the Benchmade Bug Out. All right. So, how is the action on this guy? Let's use my left hand. This has a titanium liner lock, and let's take a look at the inside here. I don't think that this, in fact, let me get a magnet on this guy real quick just to make sure. So this actually, as far as I can tell, is steel. Yeah, I'm not seeing a lock bar insert, and I believe that that is actually a steel inset liner lock, which is fine, right? Because otherwise it just needs to be a piece of titanium with a steel lock bar insert on it. So, you know, either way, fine. The action on this is actually beautiful. This is, and as I'm demonstrating with my left hand, I can reverse flick it using that fuller. I can reverse flick it using the little thumb rectangle triangle thing, right? I can forward flick it, or I can just use the flipper tab. It's beautiful. There is no double clutch, and the action is, oh, it's just gotten smoother and smoother over time. Really nice. This is not the first time that I have been impressed by a Rike, but I got to be honest, with Rike, a few times I've been disappointed. This is like another dimension. This knife, it's like it came, like they had like a team of wizards that they've been keeping on, you know, reserve to create something truly amazing. I don't think I have ever seen a production knife like this. This is, I'm going to say this right now, this is on a similar level to like when I handle $1,000 Shirogorovs. The production quality of this knife is so stupidly outstanding. I was shocked when I saw that the price, I'm going to tell you guys right now, the price on this knife is $355, which is hilariously inexpensive. Like a lot of people are going to go, $355, that's a lot of money for a pocket knife. Listen, if you're new to the knife world, what you're looking at here is something that is so far beyond what we expect. Believe it or not, actually, $355 is a fairly common territory for a pocket knife, right? There are an absolutely ridiculous number of knives that cost $355. There are an absolutely ridiculous number of knives that cost $1,000, right? Probably way more than you would imagine if you're new. This knife is so far above its competition zone, right? This would be like entering Mike Tyson in a kids boxing tournament. like this is in a category that it just doesn't belong. Like it's ridiculous that this thing is only $355. And I know you guys are like, don't say that because they're going to jack the price up. Rike, if you're watching this, don't do that. This is something that makes people like me celebrate knives like this. It is awesome that you are bringing something like this to the table with this level of quality and charging only $355 for it. So don't slap everybody in the face with a ridiculous price hike. Which, it's one, I got to point it out, but it's, on the other end of the teeter totter, people are going to say if the price goes up, it's Metal Complex's fault and other people like him. But these are the types of things I have to say. This is insane. The level of machining quality on this knife is absolutely insane at $355. Anyways, the action's very good. I'm sorry. That's something I should say for later in the review. Let's go ahead and do, God, that's hard to, stupid fingers, man. Thickness up against the Para 3, really not all I think. It's definitely a little thicker, but not insane. Length and height up against the PM2 and Para 3. This is weird because the knife is heavily curved, right? So I would say, including the curvature and the overall length, this is going to be a similar experience dimensionally to the PM2. It's just going to be a lot heavier because of all the titanium. And it's kind of awkward. It's an awkward thing to put in your pocket, right? All right, let's go ahead and, I'll tell you what. I would check the hardware, but the hardware is underneath the scale. I'm pretty sure the pivot is a T8. The information on that, the details on the hardware will be included, I believe, in Naf's video where he disassembles it. But there's not a lot of hardware as you can imagine. So it's pretty cool. But does that really matter when accessing it is kind of a quest, a perilous quest, right? I'm sitting here like, oh, it's so dangerous because I injured myself, right? It couldn't possibly be because I was being stupid. It's because there's something wrong with the thing, right? Oh, man. Yeah. I wouldn't say that this is, still though, I wouldn't say that this is like on the same level as a typical titanium frame lock in terms of, simplicity of disassembly. It is not a simple thing to take apart. It has few steps, but those steps are, right? They really are kind of scary and dangerous. So truthfully, I'll talk more about this, but all in all, I would recommend not taking this knife apart. I would recommend using compressed air to blow the thing out. And these knives should come without any need for adjustment. That is honestly what I think. Let's go ahead and weigh it. Disengage left hand there. This is going to be a little bit longer review. The weight on the Lamella. By the way, we are looking at titanium, and this is special 20 CV. It's cursive 20 CV. I'm kidding. The Rike Lamella, honestly, kind of for the amount of titanium on this is pretty. That's pretty shocking that it's only 5.15 ounces. That's not bad at all for 4 inches of blade. And full tie, and the construction has the equivalent amount of titanium as an integral. There is actually a little bit of milling on the inside for weight reduction, but not much. I'm not super upset about that weight. Balance on this is right where you're going to put your index finger. It's actually a little bit more forward, more towards the flipper tab. So really, yeah, not bad at all. All right, let's do a measurement of blade stock thickness real quick, and let's get into the meat and potatoes here. It's not going to stand up. Let's see. Okay. Blade stock thickness. 155 thousandths. That's about what I expected. ZTO 562 thickness there. Okay. It's like I was saying here. Rike is one of those knives that I think the majority of people are just now starting to realize exactly what they are capable of. It's kind of like, like it used to be that Riot was the absolute king of, I'm just wiping my fingerprints off of this, the absolute king of precision production manufacturing out of China, and nobody could touch them. Now there are companies who can touch them. There are companies who can make them bleed. Maxace is definitely one of them, and Rike is obviously, they are the unsung hero of production knife quality. They have odd hiccups here and there, like, the Anax was an opportunity for an absolute home run, and I think most people got good ones, and mine was just a goof up. But it was weird because that knife, as complex and insane as it is nowhere near as complex as this knife, and it runs about the same or a little more. In fact, it definitely runs a little more. Now, it's an integral, right? Yeah, I would say the level of precision machining that went into this is above that of the Anax. And this was literally done perfectly in terms of execution of the materials, right? When it comes to the latch and disengaging it for disassembly, that's kind of a problem. But as far as the execution of the blade and the scales and how everything lined up, I mean, initially, it's like I said, I didn't even realize this was two pieces initially because it just looked, this didn't look like a seam between two individual pieces of titanium. It looked like a milling line, and it was just part of the design aesthetic that one, you know, a part of the titanium was darker than the other part, right? It just looked like a two-tone kind of like they were just, you know, just making an otherwise boring area more interesting, you know? And it wouldn't be boring. It would just be less interesting. The machining quality on this is superior to pretty much any production knife that I've ever seen. This is insane, and I mean that. I mean, just look at the work. Look at this back here. This is just wild, man. Like, all of these lines and how everything is meeting up. Come on. This is there. Sorry, the camera's bugging out on me. This is absolutely beautiful. Even the lanyard hole is an interesting area, and that's not something that you ever hear me say on this channel, right? They made the lanyard hole a fancy, this looks like a modern, it made it look like a futuristic vacation home, right? The lanyard hole. Absolutely insane. The thumb studs have no business being this fancy. They have absolutely no business being this fancy, but they are, right? Look at the work they put into the studs, man. It's just insane. And the fuller here, beautiful, right? It's almost like, you know, like a fancy gentleman paying a bar tab, underhanding a bag of coins to the bartender. The way that they put... They wrote Lamella in cursive. No. Here's the tab. Sir, good day to you, sir. You know, it's just like they're not being pretentious, but it's just like they know, man. They knew. And I've seen them do this before. I don't think it's on the Lamella. Like they've done it on other stuff, right? But I mean, I get it. If any knife deserves to have the name of itself and the steel written in cursive on it, it's this. This knife was machined in cursive. The machines that made this knife were cursive machines. I don't know how else to define that. Normally, I don't go for this S shape. This really reminds me of Dmitry Sinkovich, right? Normally, I don't go for this S-shaped design, and still, this is not my favorite. Even on the Lamella, they're not my favorite lines, but God, it's hard not to appreciate this. And you know what's crazy? Ergonomically, this thing is pretty freaking comfortable. I gotta admit. Back here, it's kind of, it's okay, right? Some of the edges, you can feel them, but choked up, ooh, that's where that curvature really feels like I'm ready to go. This knife, and the lock-in you get back here on the spine and the jimping. The jimping's really nice, by the way. Really like that. These studs are also stops. So, I mean, that's awesome. The way that this locks out, it's really just amazing. By the way, disengagement of the lock bar, you can see they've cut it. They've cut the show sight slightly lower than the lock bar itself, and it's jimped a little bit, so it's really easy to disengage, and it's really easy to flip as well. I didn't really talk about that, but the low profile flipper tab, if you light switch it, this thing is good to go. The detent is also really good on it. Let's see if I can give you a better example of that. It kind of right there. Yeah. Oh, it's just lovely. It's lovely. We have kind of a bead blast, then a satin, and then another bead blast. Like the inside of the fuller here is blast, and then we got satin, and then we got bead blasting. Really nice. Final cutting edge, not the thinnest thing in the entire world, but it will absolutely slice. I'm going to guess that's 24 thousandths behind the edge. Maybe more like 22 thousandths. The tip, yeah, that's going to poke. I think that's pretty obvious, right? Honestly, not a bad blade to just do everyday EDC tests with. The overall presentation, it's kind of like, you know, commuting Like if you have like a 3-mile commute and you do it in a Lamborghini, it's kind of like, holy crap. Or you got a half-mile commute. You can walk, but you drive your Lamborghini there anyway. The whole thing kind of feels like that. It's just really excessive, but it's so nice though. And it's not that the design is not necessarily taking away from the utility, right? A Lamborghini might be insane, but hey, it's still doing what it was designed to do, and that's drive, right? You're just driving in style. So yeah, the blade will cut and it'll do it pretty efficiently, and you'll have pretty comfortable, you'll have a nice purchase on it while you're doing that. I love that they crowned the spine as well, or radius the spine. That's a really nice touch. Every line on this knife flows together. That's why, when the lines or the overall profile is not one that I generally gravitate towards, I really appreciate it. I'll still, have a massive amount of appreciation for design if everything flows perfectly, meaning every single part of the knife looks like it was very specifically designed for the rest of the knife to sort of complement it, right? These thuds, the studs are the weird sort of the things you're meant to engage with your thumb to deploy it. They go with everything. They sort of match, they sort of transition from the frame to the stud to the fuller. All looks good. The line right here from the fuller sort of meets up with this line here on the frame, and this meets up here with the separate piece of titanium, which is the frame underneath. The lines up here, like these little things like this, where there's this thin line, right, that travels all the way across, and it comes down here. Oh, and it meets up with the freaking lanyard hole, or the future vacation home, right? Just crazy. Pocket clip too. It really, everything goes together. And I think one of my favorite areas of the knife is back here. I think this just looks awesome. Really just absolutely beautiful. They also make another version of this knife that is black. Like two-tone, like where this gray areas, it's black right here. I think it'd be really cool if they did the whole thing in like a polished DLC. After handling the CKF Rotten Evo 3.0 in the polished DLC, I think that the Rike Lamella would be so unbelievably well accentuated. I believe that Rike can do that if they want to. It'll probably make it a little more pricey. It's not a cheap finish, but holy crap! Let's say they charge another $100 for it, right? It's still like $500 less than anything else I'd put in the same category. I mean, yes, it's manufactured in China, but again, I know that all I'm doing is giving this company incentive to jack the price up. And I know you guys are going to yell at me, right? But listen, if they do that, then it's, people are going to comment and say, hey, the best thing about this was that it was being delivered with this price tag, right? So they are still, I'm not saying like that this is a justifiable knife at $750, right? I'm saying it really surprises me that this knife was not $450 or $475, because let's be real here. I mean, be honest with yourselves too. You've never seen anything like this at that territory, even with it being manufactured in China. There's just nothing else out there, right? So I think it's cool they've got it at $355, but I think it should stay there. I think it should, this is the kind of thing that's wonderful to celebrate, not just as a reviewer, but it's just part of the knife community, right? This is the kind of thing that makes us hold these things up on a pedestal and say, this is great. Continue to use this and lead by example, right? Other companies have some catching up to do, because Rike is able to make something like the Lamella and put a $355 price tag on it. That is amazing. That's what makes it awesome, right? So anyways, sorry, getting really worked up here. The pocket clip, it's very plain, but it does go with the design, and it is, of course, milled. The only bummer is that it has one of these ceramic balls on there. Now, some people like them. I don't. I find them very pinchy, and they're too grabby. These are the types of pocket clips where you pull and pull and pull because it's so pinched onto your, pocket. It's so, that just really wanted to make sure that it wasn't going to come out of your pocket. You have to pull so hard that sometimes you yank it out of your pocket and then you end up throwing it, right? Don't pretend that's never happened to you. That's happened to me many, many times, and it always frustrates me. So it would have been nice to not have that there, but what are you going to do? Up here, it says Lamella 2023. Most of the time I get on companies for putting the name of the knife somewhere on the frame. And I also don't like it when they put anything on the frame, right? But gosh darn it, it just looks so fancy there. Honestly, I still would have preferred that they didn't put it there. But, at least they wrote it in cursive. I'm sorry, did I say 2023? It says 2022. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm reviewing it in the year 2022. Wait a minute. For a second, I was like, did this knife actually come from the future? The dumb part. I can't clap! What am I doing? I just clapped. Bless it. All right. Don't clap when you have hand injuries. Anyways, this knife did not actually come from the future. Lock up. Just proceed and get through this. Lock up. No blade play up, down, left, or right. No lock stick. No double clutch. No pivot lash. Extremely consistent in here. Nice click. Reasonable detent. I'd call it medium. Now, this, probably from me flipping it, this looks like maybe, no, I was imagining it. It's perfectly centered. Okay. And then detent lash. No detent lash. This is not going to be everybody's cup of tea. The price and the wild aesthetic, right? The Persian style, upswept tip is there's a lot more design aesthetic presentation here than there is functional tool. It is absolutely still a functional tool, right? But this is more of like a Rike saying, look what we can do when we really go hard, right? When we go all in. Now that I know that Rike can do this, and now that I know that Rike can do this and put a $350 price tag on it, for those of you screaming and crying saying they're going to up their price on everything, you bet I'm going to be more critical. It's like you got that kid in the class who just aces everything, right? And the teacher starts grading them on a different scale. Yeah, this is my A+ student here right now. Not like Rike has any, the company can literally do whatever they want. It's not like they're going to bend to my will. But I am going to judge them harder now knowing that they can do this, right? So if I see something mediocre come out of them, in the next year or so, and it's another $100, I'm going to call them out on it. And you should too. Rike is clearly capable of some excellent, literally the best quality that I've ever seen for $350. I've never seen quality like this for $355. Never. This is unbelievable. I'm going to hold them to this standard. And you should too, right? You as the community, you guys think that because I have a channel that my voice, carries. And it does. But the community is as a whole, obviously the knife community is way more powerful than I am, right? Because you guys are the ones who decides whether or not you buy this stuff. So hold them to this standard. Obviously there's nothing that's, they can do about inflation in some cases, but if we see a random $100 to $150 upcharge on new stuff within the next year, then we're going to know, hey, don't try to pull a fast one on us, right? And I'm not just coming down on Rike. Companies do that, right? So I would love to continue to celebrate amazing production models from Rike that have similar quality. I know that there's at least one other out there that has kind of a similar, it's not the shape, it's a similar aesthetic with, equivalent, it looks like it's really ultra high production quality. I would love to see Rike continue to do this. They've been doing it for a bit. I just didn't know that they could do it like this. This is one of those knives where I'm going to say, if you're somebody who has been in the knife world for a long time and you're kind of a collector, you kind of like to go out of your way to buy wild things that are almost at checkpoints, like knives that represent a certain moment in time for the knife world. This is one of those knives. This is one of those knives that's just in a black sea of just the same stuff over and over again. This thing is just like a shining golden beacon in the dead of night. It is so different. And it is such a, it's literally a checkpoint, a major, to me, it's kind of a major turning point. I did not realize that there were companies out there who could do this. And I think it's like I said earlier, knives like this make other companies try harder. as soon as other companies realize, like, did you see like what Rike did with the Lamella? Like this knife, I'm not going to name any companies, but there are some companies in the general competition zone of Rike, and especially at this price point, and Rike just made them look really stupid. And I'm not trying to be mean, right? But it's almost like, you know, there was a big revealing of like, hey, we're able to do this and we can do it for $355, right? So there are knives out there that are nowhere near, not even in the same, that's not the ballpark. They're not in the same state. They're not on the same planet, right? In terms of quality. And they're charging not just the same, but more in some cases. And it's made me feel like I should be a little bit more critical. This is absolutely one of the most amazing things of 2022, and it will make the list for best knives of 2022. That being said, this is still not a knife that I can recommend to the average person for obvious reasons. It's expensive, it's wild and crazy, it's almost an art piece, but it is functional art. If you choose to buy this knife and use it, it will actually serve you very well. I can recommend this to people who are looking to add something wild and crazy and spectacular to their collection. But somebody looking for just a good utilitarian cutting tool, right? Dollar for dollar, you're buying more like of a representation of Rike's ability to machine things to a ridiculous, godly level, right? Does that translate to utility that is superior than a pocket knife you can find between $100 and $200? No, it doesn't. You're buying luxury here. You're buying Rike's machining quality. Really cool. And if you so choose to pick this knife up, it will make you happy. It is spectacular. But that's kind of how I label it. It's one of those knives, and it's, knives like this are the reason that I decided to make two playlists for knives that I really like. One of the playlists is Metal Complex's most recommended knives, and the other one is Metal Complex's favorite knives. Sometimes, even if a knife doesn't check all of the boxes in terms of being utilitarian and being priced economically, and has all these, boxes checked for, function and manipulation and blah, 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 right? Sometimes knives hit all those checkpoints and they just don't click with me, in which case it is a knife that I could recommend to the general, knife community, but not a knife that makes me, oh, it's my favorite, right? On the flip side, sometimes it's not a knife that I can recommend at all to the general knife community, but it's one that I love for completely and totally different reasons, and that is the case here with the Lamella. I love this. This is absolutely one of my favorite knives of all time. In fact, I would say this is probably in my top 20, easily. So this will be going in my favorite knives of all time playlist. I think that this is an absolute masterpiece from Rike. So if you have an opportunity and you're interested in it, buy it. It is the cheapest $355 knife. It's ridiculous. You'll get this thing in hand and go, what? There's no way, man. Really cool stuff from Rike. I think that's going to be it. It's a 30-minute review. It went on way too long anyway. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.